My name is Lily Hartman, and I was 30 years old when my family told me I didn't deserve my grandmother's ring. They set it in my mother's living room on a rainy Sunday afternoon, with the windows fogged from the storm, the fireplace unlit, and my grandmother's small velvet jewelry box sitting on the coffee table between us like a witness no one expected to speak. My mother said it first, gently, almost sadly, as if she were doing me a kindness. Lily, you have to understand. A ring like that should go to someone who represents the family properly. My older sister, Caroline, looked down at her manicured nails and said nothing, which was worse than if she had smiled. My father cleared his throat and stared at the carpet. My Aunt Denise reached for her tea and murmured, "Your grandmother was sentimental. She didn't always think practically near the end." And just like that, they turned my grandmother's final wish into a mistake they were prepared to correct. The ring was not large. That was the first thing people noticed when they expected family jewelry to announce money. It was an antique gold ring with a cloudy oval stone in the center, the color shifting between pale blue, gray, and lavender depending on the light. Around the stone were tiny engraved leaves, worn smooth in places from decades of touch. The band was thin but strong. Inside, there were initials scratched so faintly that I had never been able to read them clearly. Grandma wore it every day for as long as I could remember, not just on holidays, not just with nice dresses. She wore it while baking bread, pulling weeds from the garden, sewing curtains, shelling peas, and wiping my tears at the kitchen table when I was a child, and my mother told me I was too sensitive again. Her name was Evelyn Hartman, though everyone called her Evie. She was my father's mother, and she was the quiet center of my childhood. She lived in a white cottage behind our family's main house, close enough that I could run there barefoot across the grass whenever home became too loud. My older sister Caroline was my mother's pride. She was beautiful, polished, clever in public, and careful enough never to look cruel where adults could see it. I was the younger daughter who asked too many questions, cared too much about old things, and had the unfortunate habit of noticing unfairness out loud. My mother called Caroline elegant. She called me difficult. My father said I had a good heart, but always in the tone people use for qualities that won't get you invited to important rooms. Grandma Evie never called me difficult. She called me awake. "When people complain that you notice too much," she told me once, "what they often mean is that they were hoping you would notice less." I was 9 then, sitting on her kitchen floor with a scraped knee and a broken birthday bracelet Caroline had accidentally stepped on. Grandma cleaned the cut, fixed the bracelet with a tiny pair of pliers, and handed it back to me like repair was a sacred act. Her ring flashed in the sunlight when she moved her hands. I remember touching the blue-gray stone and asking if it was a sapphire. She smiled. "Not everything valuable looks the way people expect." That was Grandma. She spoke in sentences that sounded simple until years later, when they opened like locked drawers. When she died, the whole family behaved as if grief could be organized by seniority. My mother took over the funeral flowers. Caroline chose the slideshow photos, carefully selecting the ones where she looked prettiest beside Grandma. Aunt Denise handled phone calls. Dad sat in the garage most evenings pretending to sort tools. I cleaned Grandma's cottage alone. Not because anyone asked me to, because I couldn't stand the thought of strangers packing her life into boxes while the smell of her lavender soap still lived in the bathroom towels. I found her grocery lists, old recipe cards, fabric scraps, letters tied with blue ribbon, and a box of birthday cards she had saved from me since childhood. Every crooked drawing, every misspelled message, every "I love you, Grandma" written in crayon. She had kept them all. When I showed my mother, she said, "That's sweet," then asked if I had found the silver serving tray yet. The will was read 2 weeks after the funeral in Attorney Samuel Price's office downtown. It was a small room with dark green walls, polished wood, and rain tapping against the windows. My parents sat together. Caroline sat beside Mom, wearing black wool and pearl earrings. Aunt Denise sat stiffly near the door. I sat alone with my hands in my lap and one of Grandma's handkerchiefs folded in my pocket. Most of the estate was simple. Grandma's savings were divided between Dad and Aunt Denise. Her cottage would remain part of the family property, though Dad would maintain it. A few personal items were named specifically: her sewing machine to Aunt Denise, her recipe books to my mother, her old garden bench to my father, and then Attorney Price paused. "To my granddaughter Lily," he read, "I leave my gold ring with the blue stone, which she once asked about with the kind of curiosity that deserves answers. She will know what to do with it when the time comes." I stopped breathing. Caroline's head snapped up. My mother's face tightened. Dad looked at me for the first time that day. Attorney Price reached into a drawer and pulled out the small velvet box. It was dark blue, worn at the corners. He placed it in front of me. I could not touch it at first. The ring had always been on Grandma's hand. Seeing it in a box made her absence feel fresh and physical. When I finally opened it, I cried silently. The stone looked cloudier than I remembered, but warm somehow, like it was holding weather inside. Caroline said nothing in the attorney's office. Neither did my mother. But silence in my family was rarely peace. It was planning. 3 days later, Mom invited me over to talk about Grandma's things. I should have known. When I arrived, the ring box was already on the coffee table because I had brought it with me. Mom had asked me to, saying Aunt Denise wanted to see it one more time. That had seemed reasonable. Grief makes people sentimental. It also makes them easier to manipulate. Caroline was there, sitting on the sofa with her legs crossed, wearing cream trousers and a soft pink sweater that made her look innocent. Aunt Denise sat beside her. Dad stood near the window, hands in his pockets. Mom began carefully. "Lily, we've been discussing the ring." I looked at the box. "Why?" She gave me that patient smile I hated. "Because Grandma's decision has created some feelings." Caroline's feelings. Caroline's mouth tightened. "You don't have to say it like that." "How should I say it?" Aunt Denise sighed. "The ring has always been considered the family ring." "No, it was Grandma's ring." "And now it should remain in the main line," Mom said. I almost laughed. "The main line?" Dad shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Mom continued. "Caroline is engaged. She will be married next spring. It makes sense for the ring to go to the granddaughter who will carry the family forward." I stared at her. "I'm not dead." "That is not what I meant." "It sounds like what you meant." Caroline leaned forward. "Lily, I'm not trying to take anything from you." I looked at the ring box between us. "You are literally trying to take something from me." Her eyes filled immediately. Caroline could cry beautifully. One tear, then another, never messy enough to make anyone uncomfortable. "I loved Grandma too," she whispered. I felt my chest tighten. "I never said you didn't." "She wore that ring to every important family event. I always imagined wearing it at my wedding." That was the difference between us. Caroline imagined. I remembered. I remembered Grandma turning soil in her garden with that ring on her finger. I remembered her holding my chin after I cried. I remembered her teaching me how to polish old silver gently, not to make it look new, but to reveal what time had not destroyed. Caroline remembered how the ring looked in photographs. Mom reached for my hand. "You don't even wear jewelry much, sweetheart." "So?" "So it would sit in a drawer with you. Caroline would honor it." I pulled my hand back. "You mean she would display it?" Caroline's tears stopped. Dad finally spoke. "Lily, maybe we can find a compromise." I turned to him, hopeful despite myself. "What compromise?" He looked miserable. "Maybe Caroline wears it for the wedding and then you keep it afterward." "No," Mom's face hardened. "That's selfish." "There it is." "Excuse me?" "The word you were working toward." Aunt Denise said, "Your grandmother may not have understood how this would look." "She understood perfectly." "You don't know that." I picked up the velvet box. "She left it to me by name." Caroline stood. "Because you were always hovering around her." The words landed like a slap. "What?" She flushed, but kept going. "You made yourself her favorite. You spent all that time at the cottage, helping her, listening to stories, acting like you were the only one who cared." I looked at my parents. Neither corrected her. That hurt more than Caroline's voice. I was with her because I loved her. Caroline laughed bitterly. Convenient, Dad said. Caroline. But weakly. Too late. I closed the velvet box and stood. I'm leaving. Mom rose quickly. Lily, don't be dramatic. You invited me here to pressure me into giving away something Grandma left me. We invited you here to talk as a family. No, you invited me here because you thought if all of you sat around me, I'd fold. Aunt Denise looked away. That told me I was right. Mom's voice sharpened. You don't deserve that ring if you're going to let it divide us. I froze at the door. I turned back slowly. What did you say? She swallowed, but pride kept her upright. I said maybe you don't deserve it. Caroline wiped under her eyes. It belongs with someone who appreciates what it represents. I looked at the ring box in my hand, then at them. I think that's exactly why Grandma gave it to me. I left before they could answer. For 2 weeks, my family called, texted, and sent relatives after me like polite debt collectors. Aunt Denise wrote that grief makes people cling to things. My mother said she was disappointed in my lack of generosity. Dad left one voicemail saying he wished I would make peace. Caroline sent a message that said, I hope keeping it is worth hurting me. I did not respond, but their words got under my skin anyway. That was the thing about being raised as the difficult daughter. Even when you know you are right, part of you keeps checking whether loving yourself has made you cruel. I stopped wearing the ring around my neck on a chain because every time I looked at it, I heard Mom saying, deserve. Then one Thursday, the clasp on the chain broke while I was at work. The ring fell onto the floor of my office with a small metallic sound. I found it under my desk, dusty but undamaged. That evening, I decided to take it to a jeweler to have the band checked and the chain repaired. I almost went to the mall. Then I remembered a small antique jewelry shop downtown that Grandma used to mention. Bell and Finch Jewelers. It sat between a used bookstore and a tailor, with old-fashioned lettering on the window and a brass bell above the door. When I stepped inside, the place smelled like wood polish, velvet, and raincoats drying near a heater. Glass cases held watches, brooches, pocket knives, lockets, and rings that looked like they had lived full lives before waiting under lights. An older man stood behind the counter, adjusting a lamp. He had white hair, dark skin, round glasses, and a measuring loop hanging from a cord around his neck. Good evening, he said. What can I help you with? I need a chain repaired, and maybe the ring inspected. He smiled. Old ring. Yes. Then you came to the right place. I placed the velvet box on the counter and opened it. The jeweler's expression changed instantly. Not dramatically, but enough. His hand stopped above the glass. May I? He asked. Of course. He lifted the ring carefully, turning it under the lamp. The blue-gray stone caught the light and flashed briefly with a violet spark I had never noticed before. He became very still. Where did you get this? My grandmother left it to me. What was her name? Evelyn Hartman. He looked up sharply. Evie Hartman? My throat tightened. You knew her? He set the ring down gently on a velvet pad. My father did. I stared at him. What? My name is Marcus Bell. My father was Arthur Bell, the original owner of this shop. He looked at the ring again. And this ring has been in our records for nearly 70 years. I gripped the edge of the counter. Records? He nodded slowly, then turned toward the back. Please wait here. He disappeared through a curtain behind the counter. I stood alone under the soft lights, heart pounding. Outside, rain streaked down the shop window. I thought of Grandma's sentence. She will know what to do with it when the time comes. Marcus returned with a leather-bound ledger, wrapped in cloth, and a small archival envelope. My father kept detailed records, he said. He believed jewelry carried history, not just value. He opened the ledger carefully. The pages were yellowed but neat, filled with dates, names, sketches, repair notes, and small black and white photos taped beside entries. He turned to a page marked 1958. There it was. A sketch of the ring, Oval stone, leaf engraving, thin gold band. My knees felt weak. Marcus read from the entry. Gold ring, antique setting, central untreated star sapphire, hidden compartment under bezel, inscription interior partially worn. Brought in by Miss Evelyn Hartman for inspection. Requested no alteration. Note: ring believed to belong originally to Clara Whitmore Hartman, suffrage organizer and school founder. I blinked. Wait, star sapphire? He smiled faintly. Not a cloudy stone, a very neglected one. And hidden compartment? That appears to be what my father recorded. My mouth went dry. I didn't know. Most people wouldn't. The ring has likely gone decades without proper cleaning or examination. He lifted it again, this time using a magnifying lens. May I inspect it more closely? Yes. He took it to a workbench behind the counter but remained in view. Under a bright lamp, he examined the underside of the stone, the tiny leaves, the rim around the setting. He used tools so delicate they looked like they belonged to a watchmaker. After several minutes, he exhaled. It's still sealed. What is? The compartment. I stepped closer. He pointed with a thin instrument. See this ridge under the bezel? It was designed to open, but not easily. Some mourning rings and keepsake rings had hidden spaces for hair, paper, miniature portraits. This one seems more complex. Can you open it? Yes, but I'd recommend doing it with a witness if this is an inherited piece and there is family tension. I laughed once, badly. There is family tension. He looked at me with understanding. Then document everything. I called Dad first. Not Mom, not Caroline. Dad. He answered on the third ring. Lily? I'm at Bell and Finch Jewelers downtown. Grandma's ring has something hidden inside it. Silence. What? The jeweler found an old record. There's a secret compartment. He said it should be opened with witnesses. Dad's voice changed. I'm coming. Dad. Yes? Do not bring Mom unless she can behave. A longer silence. Then quietly, I understand. He brought Mom anyway, and Caroline. Of course he did. They arrived 30 minutes later, wet from the rain, faces tight with curiosity and suspicion. Caroline looked from me to the counter. What is this? Marcus introduced himself and explained calmly. He showed the ledger entry. He showed the sketch. He showed the note from his father's records. Mom's face shifted when she heard school founder and suffrage organizer, as if heritage had suddenly become more interesting. Caroline crossed her arms. So it might be valuable? I looked at her. That's your first question? Her cheeks reddened. I'm being practical. Marcus said, its historical value may exceed its material value, depending on what is inside and the documentation attached. Mom touched her necklace. Historical value to the family? Marcus gave her a polite look. To whoever legally owns the ring. The silence after that was small but satisfying. He placed a small camera above the workbench to record the opening. He wrote down everyone present. He asked me, as the documented inheritor, to give permission on paper before proceeding. My mother looked irritated by that. I signed. Marcus worked slowly. The compartment resisted at first. The tiny mechanism had likely not been opened in decades. Then, with a soft click, the bezel shifted. The stone lifted slightly from its setting. Inside was a folded strip of paper, impossibly thin, protected by waxed material. There was also a tiny lock of dark hair tied with thread and a miniature photograph no larger than a fingernail. No one breathed. Marcus removed them with tweezers and placed them under glass. The paper was fragile, but readable. It was a note. Not from Grandma. From someone named Clara. To the daughter who carries this when the world tells her she is too much. Remember, women in this family have always survived by being told they wanted more than they deserved. Wanted anyway. The school deed is hidden where Evie will know to look. Do not let them sell what was built for girls like us. My mother whispered. School deed? Dad looked pale. Caroline leaned closer. Who is Clara? Marcus opened the ledger again. Clara Whitmore Hartman. According to my father's note, she was connected to the Hartman School for Girls, founded in 1909 outside the county line. It closed in the 1960s. Dad looked at me. My grandmother used to mention a school, he said slowly. I thought it was just family story. Marcus examined the miniature photograph under magnification. This may be Clara. There's writing on the back. He carefully turned it. CWH 1912. My father sat down in the chair near the counter. Mom looked unsettled now. Not greedy, unsettled. Because Grandma's ring was no longer a pretty object to redistribute. It was a key to a story none of them had bothered to learn. Marcus continued. There's also an inscription inside the ring that may become clearer after cleaning. He placed it under stronger light and angled the band. Not initials, he said. A phrase. What does it say? I asked. He cleaned the inner band lightly with a soft tool, then read, Not given, chosen. The words went through me like a door opening. Not given, chosen. My mother's face went white. Caroline looked away. Dad covered his mouth. Marcus looked at me gently. Your grandmother knew what this was. I nodded, unable to speak. He looked at the note again. And it seems she believed you would know what to do with it. Mom spoke quickly. We should take this to Attorney Price. I looked at her. We? She faltered. The family should understand what it means. The family told me I didn't deserve it. Caroline's eyes filled. Lily, that was before we knew... Before you knew it mattered? She flinched. Dad said my name softly, but I did not stop. No. Say it clearly. You thought it was just Grandma's little ring. You thought it would look better on Caroline. You thought inheritance was about who made the family look proper. Now it might connect to land, a school, history, maybe money, and suddenly it belongs to all of us? Mom's lips trembled. That's not fair. I laughed softly. Neither were you. Marcus stepped back respectfully, pretending to review the ledger while giving us space. Dad stood slowly. Lily is right. My mother turned to him. Richard. He shook his head. No. We were wrong. Caroline stared at him. Dad looked at me, his eyes wet. Your grandmother left it to you, by name. I should have defended that from the beginning. The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they fixed anything, because I had waited so long to hear him say something before the damage was finished. Mom whispered. I only wanted... You wanted Caroline to have it, Dad said, because you thought it fit her better. Mom began crying. I thought Evie was making a sentimental choice. She was, I said. That doesn't mean she was confused. Caroline wiped beneath her eyes. I did want it because it looked right for me, she said quietly. No one moved. She continued, voice shaking. I imagined wearing it at my wedding. I imagined the photos. I imagined people saying Grandma would be proud. I didn't think about why she wore it, or what she told you, or why she chose you. She looked at me. I'm sorry. I studied her face, searching for performance. There was shame there, real shame. That was new. Thank you, I said. Not forgiveness, but not nothing. Marcus cleared his throat gently. I recommend the ring, note, photograph, and ledger references be professionally documented before any further cleaning. If there is a deed referenced, Attorney Price may be able to review Evelyn Hartman's papers. Dad nodded. We'll call him. I said, I'll call him. Mom looked as if she wanted to argue. She didn't. That was new too. The next week became a storm of old documents. Attorney Price opened Grandma's remaining sealed files. Among tax records, insurance papers, and personal letters was an envelope addressed to me. Lily, when the ring opens. My hands shook as I opened it in his office. Inside was Grandma's handwriting. My dear awake girl, if the ring has opened, then you have already learned that beautiful things can carry obligations. This ring belonged to Clara Whitmore Hartman, my grandmother. She helped found a school for girls who were not welcome in the places their brothers were sent. The school closed when I was young, but the land was never sold. It was placed in trust, poorly, quietly, and almost forgotten. I have spent years trying to untangle the records. I did not finish. That is my regret. I leave the ring to you not because you are the youngest, or the sweetest, or the easiest. You are none of those things, thank God. I leave it to you because you listen when old things speak. The room blurred. Attorney Price handed me a tissue. I kept reading. Your family may think Caroline should have it because she looks like tradition. But you, Lily, ask what tradition costs. That is why the ring is yours. The land may still be recoverable. If so, do not let it become another thing the family sells for comfort. Use it for girls who need doors opened. Clara would like that. So would I. With all my love, Grandma Evie. For a long time, no one in the office spoke. Dad was crying openly. Mom sat stiffly with one hand pressed to her chest. Caroline looked down at her lap. Attorney Price confirmed that Grandma had indeed been working to locate and clarify the old trust. The land still existed, though it had been neglected and misclassified for years. It was no longer a school, only overgrown acreage with a crumbling brick building outside town. But the trust documents, combined with the ring note and Grandma's files, were enough to begin a legal review. Over the next several months, I learned more family history than anyone had bothered to tell me. Clara Whitmore Hartman had been a teacher, organizer, widow, and absolute terror to local men who believed education made girls disobedient. She helped establish a small school that taught literature, mathematics, bookkeeping, science, and practical trades to girls who otherwise would have been sent into domestic work by 14. The ring had been given to her by the school's first graduating class. Not a family engagement ring, not a symbol of marriage, a symbol of chosen work, not given, chosen. The stone was professionally cleaned and identified as an untreated star sapphire. Under direct light, a sharp 6-rayed star appeared across its surface, hidden for years beneath grime and scratches. Marcus showed it to me in the shop one evening, angling the lamp until the star flashed bright and clear. I cried. It was there the whole time, I whispered. He smiled. Most stars are. The historical trust investigation eventually confirmed that the old school land could be restored under its original charitable purpose. It could not simply be sold by the family. It was not a private asset in the way my mother had hoped during one particularly uncomfortable meeting. Grandma had been trying to revive the trust's mission before she died. And because she left the ring and related documents to me, I was appointed one of the trustees. My family did not love that. At first, Mom said it seemed like too much responsibility. Aunt Denise said the land was probably more trouble than it was worth. Caroline quietly asked whether the ring still might be borrowed for her wedding. Just for photos. I said no. She accepted it. Not happily, but she accepted it. That mattered. The old school building was worse than I expected. Ivy covered half the brick. Windows were broken. The roof had partially collapsed over one wing. But the front steps remained, wide and worn down in the center from generations of girls walking in and out. When I stood there for the first time, wearing Grandma's ring on my right hand, I felt something I could not explain. Not ownership, responsibility. Dad came with me that day. He stood beside me, looking at the building. I didn't know any of this, he said. No one did. Your grandmother did. Yes, he nodded slowly. And she told you the way she knew would survive us. That sentence stayed with me. Mom visited the site weeks later. She wore flats, which told me she had accepted there would be mud. That alone felt significant. She walked through the old front hall carefully, staring at the cracked walls and faded paint. I thought the ring was about looking like family, she said. I waited. She turned to me. It was about doing something with what family leaves you. Yes, she cried then. Not beautifully, not socially, honestly. I'm sorry I said you didn't deserve it. The exact words. No softening, no sorry you felt, no we all grieve differently. I looked at the ring on my hand. Thank you. I was wrong. Yes, she nodded, accepting the full weight of that word. Caroline's apology came closer to her wedding. She invited me to lunch at a quiet cafe instead of ambushing me at home, which I appreciated. She looked nervous. "I bought my own ring," she said. I glanced at her hand. A simple pearl ring, delicate and lovely. "It's beautiful. I chose it because I liked it, not because I thought it proved anything." She took a breath. "I was jealous that Grandma saw something in you I didn't understand." "That's honest. I'm not proud of it. That's also honest." She looked down. "Can I ask you something? Not about wearing it, I promise." I nodded. "Would you bring Grandma's ring to the wedding? Not for me to wear, just so she's there?" The old Caroline would have found a way to make that request feel like pressure. This Caroline did not. So I said yes. At her wedding, I wore the ring on my right hand and sat in the second row. Caroline looked beautiful, as everyone knew she would. But she also looked softer somehow, less arranged. During the reception, she introduced me to one of her friends and said, "This is my sister Lily. She's helping restore our great-great-grandmother's school." Not the difficult one. Not the artsy one. Not the sister who got Grandma's ring. The one restoring the school. I did not realize how much that mattered until I had to excuse myself to the restroom and cry for 3 minutes. The restoration did not happen quickly. Things worth repairing rarely do. Grants had to be written. Architects consulted. Historical societies persuaded. The trust board expanded. Marcus Bell joined as an advisor for artifacts and jewelry history. Dr. Elaine Porter from the university helped document Clara's work. Dad volunteered on weekends, mostly hauling debris and pretending not to be emotionally invested. Mom organized old photographs, which surprised me because she was good at it. Caroline hosted a fundraiser and did not center herself once. 2 years after the ring opened, the first renovated room of the Clara Hartman Learning House opened to the public. Not a full school, not yet. A community education center for girls and young women. Tutoring, financial literacy, sewing and design, coding workshops, college application help, legal rights seminars, practical doors, Clara's kind of doors. On opening day, I stood in the front hall under a restored transom window, wearing Grandma's ring. The star sapphire caught the sunlight and revealed its star clearly, 6 bright lines crossing the blue stone like something finally done hiding. Mom stood beside me. "She knew," she said softly. "Grandma?" "Yes." I looked around at the girls entering the building, at the old walls, at the new desks, at Caroline laughing with a volunteer near the registration table, at Dad quietly wiping his eyes by the doorway. "Yes," I said. "She knew." People think the jeweler revealed that the ring was valuable. He did, but that was the least important secret. He revealed that the cloudy stone was a star sapphire, that the band carried a hidden phrase, that the setting held Clara's note, that the ring was not an ornament, but a key. He revealed that my grandmother had not made a sentimental mistake. She had made a careful choice. My family said I didn't deserve Grandma's ring because they thought deserving meant looking right in photos, carrying the right name into the right room, continuing tradition without asking who had been excluded from it. Then the jeweler revealed its secret. And the secret was not just hidden under the stone, it was hidden in every woman who had worn it before me. Not given. Chosen. Grandma chose me because I had spent my life being told I noticed too much. The ring taught me that noticing is how buried things are found. And once found, how they begin to shine.